Sonic the Hedgehog has been redesigned, transformed, corrupted, roboticized, and split across dimensions more times than any other video game character in history. He has been a werehog, a knight, a god, a demon, and a version of himself so evil that the Archie Comics editorial team had to rename him twice. Here is every major variant explained. Classic Sonic. He is shorter, rounder, and silent, and the franchise cannot decide whether he is the same person or a different one. Classic Sonic is the original design of the character as he appeared from 1991 through approximately 1998. A compact hedgehog with a rounder body, shorter quills, larger eyes relative to his head, and a proportional design that communicates speed through exaggeration rather than anatomy. His legs are short, his body is spherical. His entire physique is built around the visual principle that a ball rolls fast, and Classic Sonic is essentially a ball with attitude. The design was created by Naoto Oshima, Yuji Naka, and Hirokazu Yasuhara specifically to read at high speeds on the Sega Genesis's hardware, a character whose silhouette remains identifiable even when the screen is scrolling at velocities that blur everything else into streaks. Classic Sonic does not speak. He communicates through animation, through idle poses that grow increasingly impatient if the player stops moving, through the finger wag that became his signature gesture, through a physicality that treats stillness as an offense against the character's fundamental nature. Sonic Generations in 2011 brought Classic Sonic back as a separate playable character alongside modern Sonic, treating the two designs as distinct entities from different time periods rather than different artistic interpretations of the same character. Sonic Forces in 2017 repeated this approach, and the franchise's insistence on treating Classic Sonic as a visitor from another dimension rather than a younger version of the current Sonic has created a continuity split that the fanbase has debated with a ferocity that exceeds most actual geopolitical conflicts. Classic Sonic is the franchise's most commercially valuable variant because nostalgia is a currency that appreciates with age, and the audience that grew up with the Genesis games is now old enough to buy merchandise, attend concerts, and purchase remastered editions of games they completed 30 years ago. Sonic Mania in 2017, a game built entirely around Classic Sonic's physics, aesthetic, and design philosophy, received higher critical scores than any Sonic game in over a decade, proving that the original variant is not a relic. It is a standard that the franchise has spent 25 years trying to match. Modern Sonic. He grew taller, grew attitude, and grew a voice, and the growth changed the franchise's identity permanently. Modern Sonic is the redesign introduced in Sonic Adventure in 1998, a taller, leaner, more angular hedgehog whose proportions communicate adolescence rather than the childhood energy that Classic Sonic's round body projected. The legs are longer, the quills are longer, the eyes are green instead of black, the body is thinner, more athletic, more deliberately cool in a way that Classic Sonic achieved through simplicity and Modern Sonic achieves through design. Modern Sonic speaks, he quips, he delivers one-liners during gameplay, he addresses villains with a casual disrespect that communicates confidence bordering on arrogance. And his voice, provided in English by a succession of actors including Ryan Drummond, Jason Griffith, and Roger Craig Smith before Ben Schwartz claimed the role in the films, is as much a part of his identity as his speed. The transition from classic to modern is the franchise's most significant design evolution because it changed what Sonic is. Classic Sonic is a mascot. Modern Sonic is a character. The mascot runs fast and looks cool. The character runs fast, looks cool, talks about it, and has opinions about everything happening around him. Modern Sonic's design has been refined across 27 years of games without ever returning to the classic proportions, and the consistency of the modern template, green eyes, longer quills, leaner body, has given the franchise a visual anchor that survives even the worst games, because the character still looks right, even when the game around him does not. Supersonic. 7 Chaos Emeralds and the Hedgehog becomes a god. Supersonic is the franchise's most iconic transformation, a golden, glowing, invulnerable version of Sonic whose power exceeds anything the base character can achieve by a margin so vast that the franchise has spent 34 years struggling to produce villains capable of threatening him. The transformation debuted in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in 1992, unlocked by collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds and accumulating 50 rings, and its activation converts Sonic's blue quills to gold, surrounds his body with a radiating aura, and grants him flight, invulnerability, and a speed increase that makes his already fastest character in gaming velocity feel like a warm-up. The visual design is a deliberate reference to the Super Saiyan transformation from Dragon Ball Z, a connection that Yuji Naka has acknowledged and that the franchise has never attempted to disguise because the reference is so effective that disguising it would diminish the impact. Supersonic's invulnerability is nearly absolute. In gameplay, Supersonic cannot be damaged by enemies, hazards, or environmental dangers. His ring count depletes at a rate of approximately 1 ring per second, and when the rings reach 0, the transformation ends and Sonic reverts to his base form, vulnerable and depleted. The ring timer is the franchise's most elegant power-limiting mechanism, a system that makes Supersonic unstoppable but not infinite, his godhood measured in a currency that the player must accumulate before the transformation and cannot replenish during it. If you are enjoying this so far, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment with the Sonic variant you think looks the best. Let us get back into it. Hypersonic. He is Supersonic with the limiter removed, and the franchise only showed him once because showing him twice would break the power scaling permanently. Hypersonic appears exclusively in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, unlocked by collecting all 7 Super Emeralds, the enhanced versions of the Chaos Emeralds that are accessed through the special stages in the game's combined lock-on version. Hypersonic's visual design cycles rapidly through every color of the spectrum, his body flashing between red, blue, green, yellow, white, and pink in a strobing pattern that communicates instability and excess simultaneously. The transformation grants everything Supersonic provides: invulnerability, flight, enhanced speed, and adds a screen-clearing flash attack that destroys every enemy visible on screen when Sonic performs a double jump. The Flash is Hypersonic's most significant mechanical addition because it transforms the character from an invulnerable speedster into an area of effect weapon whose mere presence in a level eliminates threats that the player does not even need to engage directly. Hypersonic has never reappeared in any subsequent Sonic game, and the Super Emeralds have never been referenced outside of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The franchise's refusal to bring Hypersonic back is almost certainly a power-scaling decision. Supersonic is already the franchise's ceiling for playable power. Hypersonic exceeds that ceiling so dramatically that including him in any subsequent game would require either depowering him, which would feel like a betrayal of the original's promise, or designing enemies capable of threatening a character whose screen-clearing flash attack renders most combat encounters irrelevant. Hypersonic is the franchise's forbidden transformation, a power level the series accessed once and then locked away because the key was too dangerous to leave in the drawer. Dark Sonic. He appears for approximately 45 seconds in a single episode of Sonic X, and those 45 seconds produced more fan content than most characters generate across entire series. Dark Sonic is a transformation triggered by extreme negative emotion, specifically rage, when Sonic witnesses the Metarex torturing 2 of Cosmo's fellow Cedrians in episode 67 of Sonic X. The transformation is not Chaos Emerald powered, it is emotion powered, a dark counterpart to Supersonic whose energy source is fury rather than cosmic gemstones. Dark Sonic's design is a color inversion, Sonic's blue replaced by deep black, his quills sharper and more angular, his expression conveying a cold rage that the character's default personality never permits. The transformation lasts seconds. Sonic attacks the Metarex with a speed and violence that exceeds anything he demonstrates in any other Sonic X episode. His movement's so fast that the animation depicts them as displaced air rather than visible motion. The Metarex are destroyed instantly. And then the transformation ends, Sonic reverting to his base form as the rage subsides, and the franchise never references Dark Sonic again. The brevity is what makes Dark Sonic significant. The franchise showed Sonic losing control exactly once, demonstrated what a Sonic without moral restraint looks like in combat, and then immediately pulled back because the character the franchise built cannot sustain that level of darkness without becoming someone else. Darkspine Sonic. The World Rings replaced the Chaos Emeralds, and the replacement produced a transformation whose visual design is the franchise's most artistically ambitious. Darkspine Sonic appears in Sonic and the Secret Rings, a 2007 Wii game set inside the world of the Arabian Nights, and his transformation is powered by 3 of the 7 world rings, specifically the rings of sadness, rage, and hatred, emotions absorbed from the death of Shahira, the genie of the ring who sacrifices herself to protect Sonic from the villain Erasor Jin. The design strips Sonic's body of its usual blue and replaces it with a deep indigo purple base marked by white stripes across the quills and arms. His eyes lose their pupils, replaced by blank white orbs, and the overall aesthetic communicates a controlled fury that Dark Sonic's brief appearance only hinted at. Darkspine Sonic is fueled by negative emotions but is not corrupted by them. He channels sadness, rage, and hatred into directed power rather than allowing them to consume his personality, which makes Darkspine the franchise's most emotionally complex transformation because the power source is pain, and the application of that pain is justice rather than destruction. Darkspine Sonic can manipulate the properties of the world around him, warping time and space within the Arabian Nights reality. And his final battle against Alf Layla Wa Layla, the monstrous form Erasor assumes after absorbing the remaining world rings, is one of the franchise's most visually dramatic boss encounters. Excalibur Sonic. He pulled a sword from a stone, and the franchise gave him a suit of golden armor and a weapon that cuts through dimensions. Excalibur Sonic appears in Sonic and the Black Knight, the 2009 Wii game set inside the world of Arthurian legend, and his transformation is the franchise's most aesthetically distinct super form because it does not resemble any previous Sonic power-up. Instead of a golden glow over Sonic's standard body, Excalibur Sonic is fully encased in golden armor, a knight's suit of plate that covers his entire body from head to quill tip, and he wields Excalibur, the legendary sword assembled from the combined power of the 4 sacred swords carried by the Knights of the Round Table throughout the game. The armor gives Sonic a silhouette that is unrecognizable as Sonic from a distance, a medieval warrior whose proportions are obscured by plate and whose identity is communicated only by the quills protruding from the helmet. The franchise never brought Excalibur Sonic back because the storybook series, Sonic and the Secret Rings, and Sonic and the Black Knight, was a self-contained 2-game experiment that the franchise moved away from after the Black Knight's reception. Werehog Sonic. Sonic became a werewolf, the game became a brawler, and the franchise learned a lesson it has never forgotten about what happens when you change the core character's fundamental gameplay identity. The Werehog is Sonic's most controversial transformation, a hulking, stretch-armed, feral version of the character that appears at night during Sonic Unleashed after Dark Gaia's energy corrupts Sonic's body during the game's opening sequence. During daylight stages, Sonic plays as standard modern Sonic, running through high-speed levels with the boost mechanic that defined the best moments of Unleashed's gameplay. At night, Sonic transforms into the Werehog, his body expanding, his arms elongating to cartoonish proportions, his speed replaced by strength, and the gameplay shifting from a speed platformer to a slow, methodical beat-em-up whose pace is the antithesis of everything Sonic represents. The Werehog's stretchy arms can grab ledges, slam enemies, and perform combo attacks whose animation priority locks Sonic into lengthy sequences that prevent movement until the combo completes. The night stages are approximately twice as long as the day stages, which means the majority of Sonic Unleashed's runtime is spent playing as a character whose primary attribute is the absence of the one thing the audience bought the game for: speed. The Werehog is the franchise's most instructive failure because it proved that Sonic's identity is not just the character, it is the velocity. Remove the velocity, and the character stops being Sonic regardless of what he looks like, and the audience will not accept a Sonic game that spends most of its runtime being something other than a Sonic game. Fleetway Supersonic, he is evil, and the evil is the point. The British Sonic the comic, published by Fleetway Editions from 1993 to 2002, reimagined Supersonic as a villain rather than a power-up, a psychotic entity that emerges when Sonic absorbs too much chaos energy and whose personality is the complete inversion of everything Sonic represents. Fleetway Supersonic does not protect. He destroys. He does not save civilians. He terrorizes them. He does not fight Robotnik. He fights everyone, including Sonic's friends, and the transformation from hero to monster is depicted not as a power-up, but as a possession. Sonic's consciousness overwhelmed by a golden-eyed maniac whose only desire is destruction on a scale that makes Robotnik look measured. Fleetway Supersonic's design is identical to the standard Supersonic, golden quills and all, but his expression is permanently twisted into a grin that communicates malice rather than confidence, and his eyes are drawn with a sharpness that transforms the familiar Supersonic face into something predatory. The British comics decision to make Supersonic evil is the franchise's most radical reinterpretation of a core mechanic because it converts the reward, the transformation that every game trains the player to earn, into a punishment whose activation threatens the hero's allies as much as his enemies. Fleetway Supersonic eventually separates from Sonic entirely and becomes an independent character, a being of pure chaos energy whose struggle between his destructive nature and a slowly developing conscience produces one of the comic's most compelling long-term arcs. Scourge the Hedgehog. He is evil Sonic with a crown, and his journey from palette swap to fully realized villain is the Archie comics' most impressive piece of character development. Scourge began as anti-Sonic in the Archie comics continuity, a green-furred mirror universe counterpart who was introduced as a simple evil twin, the version of Sonic from a dimension where the moral alignments are reversed. Anti-Sonic was a bully, a thug, a leather jacket-wearing delinquent whose villainy was defined entirely by being the opposite of whatever Sonic represented. He was boring. And then writer Ian Flynn took over the Archie Sonic comics and transformed Anti-Sonic into Scourge, a character whose villainy was rebuilt from the ground up into something that actually worked. Scourge actively chose to be evil. He looked at the multiverse, saw infinite versions of Sonic who were heroes, and decided that differentiation was more important than morality. If every other Sonic in the multiverse saves people, Scourge conquers them. Not because he lacks the capacity for heroism, but because heroism is common and Scourge refuses to be common. He conquered his home dimension, Moebius. He crowned himself king. He assembled an army. And his super form, powered by the Anarchy Barrel, his dimension's version of the Chaos Emeralds, produces a purple-hued transformation whose color inverts Supersonic's gold, the same way Scourge's morality inverts Sonic's heroism. Metal Sonic. He is the franchise's most enduring robotic variant, and his identity crisis is the engine that drives his most compelling storyline. Metal Sonic was built by Dr. Eggman as a robotic duplicate designed to match Sonic's speed and surpass his combat capability, a mechanical hedgehog whose programming is focused on a single objective: destroy the original. Metal Sonic's design is the franchise's cleanest villain aesthetic: a sleek blue chassis with a jet engine in his torso, red eyes behind a black visor, and a body whose proportions mirror Sonic's, but whose materials, metal instead of flesh, quills instead of fur, communicate artificiality with every surface. In Sonic CD, Metal Sonic races Sonic through Stardust Speedway in one of the franchise's most iconic set-piece sequences, a head-to-head sprint across a collapsing environment where the loser is destroyed by Eggman's laser and the winner earns nothing except survival. The race established Metal Sonic's identity as the Mirror, the version of Sonic whose speed is equal and whose purpose is opposition. Sonic Heroes elevated Metal Sonic from henchman to primary antagonist, revealing that the Metal Sonic who had been disguising himself as Eggman throughout the game had achieved sentience, declared independence from his creator, and transformed into Neo Metal Sonic, a shape-shifting entity whose ambition exceeded anything Eggman ever programmed. Neo Metal Sonic's final form, Metal Madness and then Metal Overlord, is a kaiju-sized mechanical dragon whose power requires all 12 playable characters from the game's 4 teams to defeat simultaneously. Metal Sonic is the franchise's most dangerous robotic variant because his programming eventually produced something Eggman never intended: a machine that wanted to be alive, and whose definition of being alive was being the real Sonic. Mecha Sonic. He is not Metal Sonic, and the distinction matters more than the franchise has ever acknowledged. Mecha Sonic appears in Sonic and Knuckles as the boss of the Sky Sanctuary Zone, a robotic Sonic variant whose design is bulkier, less streamlined, and more overtly mechanical than Metal Sonic's sleeker chassis. Where Metal Sonic is built for speed, Mecha Sonic is built for combat, his body heavier, his armor thicker, his attacks more forceful. Mecha Sonic's most significant gameplay moment is his absorption of the Master Emerald's power during the Knuckles campaign, a sequence where the robot taps into the same energy source that sustains Angel Island and transforms into a super form whose golden glow mirrors Supersonic's, but whose aggression exceeds anything the heroic transformation produces. The distinction between Metal Sonic and Mecha Sonic is one the franchise has largely abandoned, with Metal Sonic absorbing most of the cultural attention and Mecha Sonic fading into the background of franchise history. But Mecha Sonic's ability to achieve a super form through the Master Emerald is a detail that no other robotic Sonic variant has replicated, and the implication that artificial beings can access chaos energy the same way organic beings can is one of the franchise's most underexplored pieces of lore. Boom Sonic. The redesign added sports tape, and the sports tape started a war. Sonic Boom is a 2014 sub-franchise consisting of 2 games, a television series, and a toy line whose redesigned characters bear only a passing resemblance to their mainline counterparts. Boom Sonic is taller than modern Sonic, his legs are longer, his arms are longer, his quills are more angular and swept back, and his entire body is wrapped in sports tape, the modern athletic bandages that cover his hands, feet, and various joints in a visual detail that the fanbase reacted to with a hostility that surprised everyone involved in the redesign. The sports tape was intended to communicate athleticism and an adventurous lifestyle. A Sonic who tapes his joints because he runs so hard that his body needs support. The fanbase interpreted it as unnecessary clutter on a character whose clean design was his strongest visual asset. Boom Sonic exists in a separate continuity from the mainline games, and the television series Sonic Boom ran for 2 seasons with a comedic tone that prioritized character interaction and meta-humor over the action-adventure framework of the mainline franchise. The show was well received, the games were not. Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric on the Wii U is widely considered one of the worst Sonic games ever produced, and its technical failures, broken physics, game-breaking glitches, and a combat system whose sluggishness contradicts everything Sonic represents, damaged the Boom sub-brand so severely that the redesign was quietly retired. Movie Sonic. The internet redesigned him, and the redesign saved the franchise's cinematic future. The Paramount Sonic films, beginning in 2020, initially revealed a character design so catastrophically miscalculated that the trailer's reception forced the studio to delay the film and rebuild the character model from scratch. The original movie Sonic design featured human-proportioned teeth, small disconnected eyes, a muscular humanoid body, and fur textures that placed the character in the deepest trench of the uncanny valley. The internet's response was immediate, unified, and devastating. The redesign, produced under extreme time pressure by the visual effects team, replaced the human-adjacent proportions with a design that respected the game character's iconic features: large connected eyes, proportional gloves and shoes, rounder body proportions, and an expressiveness that communicated Sonic's personality through animation rather than through realistic anatomical detail. Ben Schwartz's vocal performance anchors the film version with an energy that balances childlike enthusiasm with the character's signature confidence, and the 3 Paramount Sonic films have collectively grossed over $1.5 billion worldwide, making Movie Sonic the most commercially successful variant in franchise history. Movie Sonic's origin rewrites the game lore entirely, establishing Sonic as an alien hedgehog from another dimension whose speed generates electrical energy and whose childhood on Earth was spent in hiding with a bag of power rings that function as dimensional portals. Sonic Prime variants. The franchise splintered Sonic across the Shatterverse, and each shard produced a different version. Sonic Prime, the 2022 Netflix animated series, takes the multiverse concept and applies it to Sonic himself, creating a narrative where the destruction of the Paradox Prism shatters reality into parallel dimensions called the Shatterverse, each one containing alternate versions of Sonic's friends and enemies. The variants are not alternate Sonics, they are alternate worlds whose inhabitants are modified versions of the mainline cast. New York City is a dystopian industrial nightmare ruled by a council of alternate Eggmen. Boskage Maze is a prehistoric jungle world. No Place is a pirate-themed ocean dimension. Each Shatterverse dimension contains versions of Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, and the rest of the cast whose personalities and designs reflect the dimension's theme, but Sonic himself remains singular across the Shatterverse, the one constant in a multiverse of variables, which is the series' most interesting structural decision because it positions Sonic not as one variant among many, but as the thread that connects every variant to the reality they were shattered from. And that is every major Sonic variant the franchise has produced across 34 years of games, comics, cartoons, and films. The pattern underneath all of them is the same question asked through different colors, different proportions, and different power sources. What happens when you change Sonic? The answer has been consistent since 1991. Change his color and he becomes a god. Change his shape and he becomes a werewolf. Change his morality and he becomes a villain. Change his medium and he becomes a movie star. But change his speed and he stops being Sonic because speed is not an attribute Sonic possesses. Speed is the attribute that possesses Sonic, the defining characteristic that survives every redesign, every transformation, every dimensional split, and every controversial sports tape-wrapped reboot the franchise has ever attempted. The variants change everything about the Hedgehog except the one thing that makes the Hedgehog. He runs. He has always run. And every version of him, from the round pixel on the Genesis, to the Golden God hovering above the Death Egg, to the Werehog lumbering through a night stage that nobody asked for, is measured against the same standard. How fast does he go, and does the going feel like freedom? The variants that answer yes are remembered. The variants that answer no are lessons. And the franchise has been learning from both for 34 years without ever slowing down long enough to forget which answer matters.